All right, folks. So, uh, welcoming you to this Ask Me Anything session with Harinee Muralinath on don't just trust the tool, ask what it can touch, right? Now, with all these AI and everything, right? The very least talked thing about AI is its guardrails, it's the security around it, it's the ethics, and that's what we're going to cover the maximum part of it in today's session. Additional to the question that we've already received and we're going to ask Harini, if you still got any additional question, feel free to put that in the chat. By the end of the session, if time allows us, we'll surely going to ask that thing. Sorry, it just moved out. Perfect. A huge shout out to our sponsor, BrowserStack. It's because of companies like BrowserStack that we're able to host such events at scale. So a huge thank you to them. We're just going to quickly see a very quick snapshot around BrowserStack. So there it is.
BrowserStack began in 2011 with a bold vision to simplify testing for development teams everywhere. Founded by Ritesh Arora and Nakul Agarwal, it has grown into the world's leading cloud testing platform. From launching automated testing in 2013 to building a cutting-edge AI-powered test platform today, BrowserStack has consistently innovated to stay ahead of developers and QA's needs. We now enable over 1 billion tests annually, with 7 million users across 135 plus countries and 700 plus engineers, driving AI innovation across 30 plus testing products by 2026. Trusted by 50,000 plus customers, including nearly every Fortune 500 company, BrowserStack powers testing across industries like technology, finance, retail, automotive, and more. BrowserStack, the comprehensive test platform.
Perfect. Now I'll very quickly talk about the test tribe. A lot of you already know. For the new folks, right? Test tribe is world's largest and the most liveliest software testing community, turned into an edtech startup. We started in 2018 with a mission to give testing craft the glory it deserves, while we co-create smarter, prouder, and confident testers. We always take pride in providing the right upskilling and growth solutions for the global testing professionals through our various offerings across courses, memberships, cohorts, online and offline community spaces, and global events, right? And we do that at scale, and we are very proud that we've hosted 430 plus testing events like conferences, hackathons, meetups, webinars, and these AMA sessions and Drivecast like these. We proudly have footprint of over 120k plus testers from 130 plus countries. And the goal is to give every single tester the life-altering growth, right, through community and technology. Some quick numbers around what we've been done so far, and we have presence with 30 plus cities physically and doing city meetups, conferences, workshops, and hackathons across ways. And we have a lot of value-driven community initiatives like writing, speaking, volunteering, ambassador programs, library of testing, and one-on-one mentorships, along with city chapters. And with this, I'll quickly plug in TribeConf, right? What is TribeConf? TribeConf is India's largest offline testing conference happening in Bangalore for 2 days, 11th and 12th of July, with top of the line 15 plus speaker lineups for 2 days at Radisson Blue, Bangalore. And this is going to be the epitome of community event that we do, and the power of community, the engagement, the knowledge sharing, the network building, and most importantly, the energy that we share there with our premier sponsor, BrowserStack there. So we'll post it in the poll right now. If you would be interested in this, we'll surely reach out to you. And with this, right, I formally once again introduce Harinee Muralinath, the speaker for today's session. She's currently serving as director at Thoughtworks. She's a business information and security officer there for India and Middle East. And she has a very extremely impressive background in software delivery across roles, and she's established her security practice in India and served as a head of security and global community lead for security. And she's been very curious about these, the ethical and security issues around Gen AI and how they are shaping, and she's shaping thoughtful governance around it, right? She's been an awarded and recognized woman tech leader in India, and she finds a deep purpose, right, in contributing to open source, growing the community, mentoring through speaking, writing, and volunteering. Welcome to the session, Harini, and really thankful for you to, spare your time and do this with us. Uh, Hello.
Hello. Hi.
Welcome to this AMA, Harini.
Thank
How are you
you.
feeling today?
I am actually very excited because I know this is a great community and it is just a great opportunity for me to be coming here and share my thoughts with everyone. And thank you so much for having me here. Thank you.
Super. Right. We've received a lot of questions, right, through the community and across the places, and kind of compiled them, most of them. Folks, apart from all the questions that I'll be asking, if you guys still have burning questions and you think that everyone in the community should get an answer to it, put it in the chat. We'll try to, if time persists, we'll try to cover those as well, right? So, Harini, to start up with, right, this conversation, right? The AI tools are evolving very fast. We all know this, right? What do you see as their biggest contribution to testing and automation in the current context, right? Right now, wherever we are in the uh, AI race for testing and automation, where do you see it right now?
Sure, thanks for that. It's actually a good question to start with because we are talking of the possibilities with AI, and I think we are all seeing everywhere that this is the hot topic. Everybody in every field is talking about AI and what more can we do with it, and there's just so much energy around this. That I think from a testing perspective or automation perspective, it's good to probably break it down a little bit and say what all are there when we come to testing and hence where all can we use them. So for example, if I talk of automations first, right? There is, I mean, if you look at coding or automation enhancements, I mean, these large language models that we have, there are coding assistants that help people now, right? So for example, the likes of Cursor, Copilot, Klein. I would love to know if people have been using any of this. If you can throw in an emoji there, maybe I can grab an understanding if there are people who have got some experience with using this for their automation. But there are all these different aspects of helping you code, which where large language models, tools, resources, MCP, all of these have come in and they're helping with creating more easier workflows. If I talk about specifically automation tools, you can always be thinking about functional testing or non-functional testing tools. I think there have been some enhancements. Like if I look at tools like, let's say, Apply tools who are doing some or trying things out from a visual testing perspective, or even in WebDriver, there are plugins that are getting built. There is there have been some work around self-healing locator finders. So those kinds of things where AI has definitely been pushing in, helping further bring these tools up. I think this, though, is a part where we still have to grow a little bit more. I think there is more space for innovation, and I'm very excited to see how that grows in. But if I talk of the broader testing, area, even for manual testing, there is just so much that you can use your AI for. Like, for example, if you look at the fact that there is a story or a feature that has come in, and you're looking to create test acceptance criteria or test scenarios from acceptance criteria. There are tools that actually plug into your Jira, you can write like an autonomous workflow itself to do that, which would probably understand what your feature is, bring up the right kind of test cases from it, write some automation code for you, and you can probably review that and push in. So there's just so many possibilities that you can bring in through AI. I think there are some where we are already going ahead, and I think some which where we are still catching up, and a lot of innovation can still be brought in. So I think it's exciting times and still a lot of scope, I guess.
Perfect. Now, like you mentioned, right, about these agents, and there are overlaps and they can do a lot of things for you. One of the question that comes into my mind right now, it's just a follow-up to the previous one. Uh, what kind of access do these tools or AI assistants or agents typically get that the testers are not aware of, right? We might know, okay, what's XYZ thing it's going to do or take access of to
Yeah.
execute Z's action. But what are the things that they typically get access to that we are not even aware of, and we don't even know if they are overstepping onto that?
Fair question. Especially when you ask about overstepping. I think first we need to understand what are the boundaries where things become an overstep. So I'll answer your question, but I'll take a step back to just talk about what is it that you try to protect, right? I think that's the first thing that we should be analyzing and understanding. So uh, any chapter zero of security, or or a security book or a security certification will tell you about CIA triad. And CIA basically stands for confidentiality, integrity, availability. These are essentially the broad three categories where you are trying to protect something, right? Security, protection, that's what we are talking about, isn't it? So when you say that someone is overstepping or something is, trying to get access to more than what it should, you're trying to protect either confidentiality of something, like it could be your data, your environments, your information. It could be essentially the permissions that it should actually have to your files. Integrity, which is to say that I don't like, if my data is supposed to be in a certain format, it doesn't change, nobody else changes it, especially without a proper permission or a proper log in place. And then availability, that you try to you want a service and that's not available, so some of this is causing that. And honestly, when we talk of accesses and what we don't have a view into of all these tools, I think it can lie in either of these categories, right? So when I say confidentiality, now when you're using your AI based tools for testing, what you do is that you actually would plug it in with your repository, right? I mean, that is just the bare minimum. Now, the repository, what it contains and how that information might be used by these AI tools is something that you need to be a little bit more conscious of. For example, not every information is sensitive, right? I mean, even if there is, it gets access to saying that, I have a login page, and these are the locators on the login page. I mean, big deal. I mean, anybody who would access that on your public website would also get it by just inspecting the elements itself, right? So that is not what you're trying to protect. So the first question is, what are you trying to protect, and how would they get that access to that, or how can you limit that access? So if you're trying to protect, for example, your test data, right, or your and why would you try to protect your test data? Because lower environment test data is probably not that bad, unless it leads you to do malicious stuff to your environments. But a higher environment data would be extremely important to protect, like if you have a staging or a pre-prod kind of an environment, or even production if that's where you're testing. So if you're using these tools over there, just I would say that it's not about just access, it's an access that you provided to them. It is something that you brought them closer to what they can misuse. And then again, the other kinds of information or other kinds of or other ways of looking at this could also be, if I look at integrity, for example, if you're using the likes of Klein or Cursor for coding, which are basically plugins onto your Visual Studio or your IDEs, there are places that you can actually ensure that they can directly go ahead and edit with or without your permission. So if you've created that kind of setting, you say that, okay, go ahead, change everything. Don't ask me. I don't have the time to look through what you're changing. Then you provided that access to the tool, right? So in that case, of course, they have access to what you have, what you have got on that, not just that repository. In fact, on that drive, on that file system that you have maybe on your laptop or wherever you're coding for it, if you've also given it access to go ahead and push to Git or read from Git or clone from Git, you've actually given it much more access than just reading. And it can actually do all of these things. So I think when we talk of accesses and that we are not aware of, essentially what I'm coming to is to say that many times we can probably be aware of it if we look through the settings, if we look through the fine prints, if we look through what these tools actually do behind the scenes. And we can limit those problems from occurring. It's just that we are not very conscious of a few things. We don't think about what is it that we are trying to protect. What is important to protect? What does this particular tool actually do behind the scenes? Because we are not used to seeing that also, right? We just use a tool directly for our purposes. And what if something were to go wrong, who is liable for this? Where does the responsibility actually lie? I think these three things talk about how do we manage the unknowns in accessing or giving access to our tools there.
Perfectly explained with the right context. Love the answer. I have just one very quick question, right? Just answer it very add on to this. I've seen that teams often assume that the tool that they're going to use is safe by default, right? So they tend to ignore these blind spot, right? If you could tell me what is this mentality about, like as testers, we're always about to question everything, right? We're trained to question everything. But as soon as it comes to AI, we're quickly to the fact that these are safe by default and we ignore the blind spots. What is this about, and have you seen these things happening? And if you could just highlight some quick blind spots that are generally ignored by testers.
Yeah, sure. I think some of the blind spots, as I did speak about, they still stand. I think if you, I mean, if I talk about why this happens is also because we are not used to thinking about the behind the pictures of a tool, right? Usually you would have, let's say, an open source tool or a paid tool. I see that someone actually asked about paid tools and saying that does that mean that we are sharing the accountability? The thing is that with paid tools or open source tool, like traditionally what we have been working on is that we know what we are working with. So if it's open source, it's clearer about what the internals and the mechanisms of the tool are. If it is paid, it is a black box, but then we know that we can rely on the architecture that is presented by the owner of that SaaS platform or whoever is doing that. And honestly, even then, even traditionally speaking, we have had the risk. We have had the risk wherein if it's a SaaS hosted tool, even if it is paid, architecturally speaking, there is a possibility where they might still be storing information on their servers, but then they have the liability to protect it, right? What happens when AI tools comes in is that there is another third party to all of this. So the supply chain has actually increased. There is another third party which are either your LLMs, or there are other resources or tools or MCP servers behind the scenes, where this particular um, tool itself, or the tool provider itself, also has limited capacity to control, right? And so if you look at the blind spot, one of the blind spots is that we don't think about that accountability. We don't think about uh, where can issues actually land up. So if I do provide, let's say, access to my configuration files, and they have higher environment endpoints or API keys or something like that, um, the data is actually traveling through multiple places. It's traveling through the interface of the tool. It is traveling to the backend of the provider, and it is also traveling to the LLMs itself. So I think the blind spots start with the fact that you do not understand that where all your threat vector lies, or where all the threats can actually occur. The other blind spots is, as I was saying earlier, we don't look at the settings or the terms and conditions that come with the tools that they are talking about. If it is already called out that there are certain things where you are using another LLM, let's say you're connecting with an Anthropic or an OpenAI LLM in the backend, you actually have to be aware of what are the terms and conditions or the liabilities that they will hold or not hold. Like, for example, depending on the licensing that you take, they might promise that we will train or not train our data or our model based on your data, right? So this becomes important, and I think traditionally we are not used to something like this, but it becomes important to actually be aware of what that tool is doing behind the scenes too. And in front, I would say, look at sandboxing if you're not sure, like what access the tool has. If you're not sure what all accesses it is, or how it is going to use your information, or the access permissions that it has, try and sandbox the tool itself, so that it doesn't go beyond a certain um, access, right? It doesn't go beyond a certain limit or a boundary that could be there. So that these are some blind spots, because we are just culturally and traditionally not used to thinking about these things when we are using a tool. We just go ahead and try, and especially when there is a word of mouth, we just go ahead and try with these things as well, right?
Perfect. Now, up till here, we've just talked about, okay, what's happening, and all the problems and excesses that AI have. Uh, would like to move towards the next part, the upcoming sections, and the questions around how do we then take control of the visibility around what's happening and what that AI is touching, right? So how can teams practically monitor or audit what an AI assistant is actually touching, like whether it be code, the data, or the API, right? How do we actually and practically monitor or audit the AI assistant that we are using?
This is actually a good question, because it's a tough question. It is, I would say, it is not very straightforward. It is not a straightforward answer saying that, oh, you will just put logs everywhere, or because, I mean, you are there to actually test a product. You don't have the time to sit and create logs for everything. But one of the ways of monitoring what it is, accessing or touching, or what it can do, one of them is to put a human in the loop. What I mean is, see, one of the, like, just to take an example, one of the problems could be that it pulls in, when you're automating using some of these AI assisted coding platforms, for example, it might be pulling in dependencies that are insecure, for example, or you don't need them because it's hallucinating. It probably is just going beyond what it needs to be doing. Um or it might actually incorporate some insecure code in there which shouldn't exist. So don't just blindly commit, at least not as of today. Why I say that is because I think we will get to a point where we will become better and more secure, and it will be an inherent quality in some of these tools itself to make sure that we're not spitting out insecure code, or how we're writing further from there. Even if you're looking at the test cases generation, for example, there is a possibility that the test cases that are generated are hallucinated. They're not exactly what they should be. There is so in such things, make sure that your commits are something that you're definitely checking for. That is a log for you that you can actually test for. The other things are a little bit more proactive, I think, which is to say that know which sources you are actually getting these tools or servers from, because there are many very kinds of tools and servers which are out there in the market, and they are also using the fact that you would have blind faith and people don't take educated understanding of what is it that they're downloading or installing. So they would be spoofed servers, for example. They could be advertising about a certain tool so much that you think it's genuine, but it isn't. There are things which are behind the scenes. So to be able to audit, honestly, I would say it is not that straightforward, because if things do happen, it's very difficult to understand that within the tool there are all these things that happen, because they're just black boxes. I mean, at least the LLM part of it, or the tools part, or the resources that the LLMs might be using, is usually going to be a black box for you, even if you're using an open source tool in itself. So I would say it's very difficult. So it is easier to just make sure that you have human in the loop, and you have the right proactive measures that you have taken, so that you can place your trust accordingly.
Okay, so what I could sense of is one, be very careful and be proactive in the documentation and access beforehand rather
Yeah.
than having an afterthought.
Yeah, it is tough, I would say, to actually otherwise uh, audit or monitor what it is doing, and which is why it's just better to ensure that you're limiting what it can do. So do not, for example, do not check saying that go ahead and edit anything in the world that you want. Um, Put in those limitations to the tool, so that you can review before this happens. I know that we are looking for AI because we want to be quicker. Um, but even if you do this, you will still be quick. I mean, you'll be fairly quicker than just figuring everything out right from the beginning. Right? So you'll still be quicker, but it is worth having that validation right now. And plus, you can also, of course, do some kind of periodic reviews, just to see that what are these permissions that we have granted, and you can't assume that once you've granted them, the permissions live forever. So revisit the permissions that you've given to your tools as well.
Hmm. Have you personally come across any instance where, someone put in too much early trust into an AI or automation tool and that later on caused severe consequences?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely, I mean, the fact that the power or the trust that we place on AI comes also from the news of many of the, I wouldn't call them breaches, but incidents that we have seen in the wider world too. I mean, it's not necessarily like this example is not necessarily about AI and SDLC, but for example, there was a very famous airline which just went ahead and issued some coupons which don't exist, right? And then the user was obviously infuriated kid and went ahead and filed a lawsuit. There was one where a lawyer did some search and got some legal case or something like that, and they referenced this in the court without doing a background check, and then they got a great fine or something like that. So basically what I'm trying to say is that there is it is just inherent that we put a lot of trust where there are hallucinations, there are data flows, there are all of these things which exist behind the pictures that we don't think about. But coming to people have put in early trust, I would say there are definitely places where we have seen where the code which has been generated uh, is not secure in itself. Like the code that actually comes in is not something which uh, takes care of all kinds of edge cases, for example, and so it pulls in dependencies and libraries which are insecure and nobody would actually think about it. Like, for example, if you are writing code, right, for your test, you would take a lot of caution before you would use, let's say, a function like eval, right, or a JavaScript console content that you would write. But depending on what model you're using and what prompt you have given, it may or may not think that this can be a dangerous way of writing this, right? So we have come across incidents, not incidents. I mean, they didn't become incidents because we took care of it, or it didn't actually make to production. But I've seen where the tool itself just has created information or created code, or where it has suggested something which is actually not a secure way of doing testing or writing your test code and all of that. So I've seen some of that for sure.
Now, see, with time, all these AI tools become more and more integrated only, right, in our testing environment, right? This is not going to reduce, right? That's for sure, right? Now, you've talked about how the only approach is adding humans and being very proactive about it, right? And not as an afterthought, right? How should teams think about governance, ethical boundaries, and accountability? And when I say these three things, I say not just from a proactive, but also if things go wrong, right? With AI, right, we only talk about all these things when something disastrously go wrong, right? So how would you define these three things, or what are your views that teams should start thinking about these things? Because this is the least talked thing about AI in today's time, which is governance and accountability.
Yeah,
right? Let alone the ethical boundaries part of it, right? Your opinion on this, and how would you say or suggest teams to take care of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'll talk about what I suggest as measures to generally consider. There are a few points on this, so bear with me. The first one I would say is understanding or laying down a good understanding of what your asset and data classification is. So I would say start there, because as I was saying, there is just so much, right? The data that you're talking of, the different kinds of assets that you're protecting. For example, if you're writing infras code, Terraform code or something like that, it based on what you're writing, it might get direct accesses to the endpoints or the API keys for that, or login information or things like that, right? So try and understand, but that as opposed to, let's say, getting access to the visual part of your web page might not, like, you would know that is more sensitive versus this one. So the first thing I would say is that understand your data and asset classification. and protect your data based on sensitivity. So add a clear guidance on what prompt hygiene looks like. The fact that even if you are going ahead and prompting in, let's say, a chat GPT, for example, because you want to write some tests or you want to have a chat with it to come up with a test strategy, for example, um, make sure that you have anonymized at least or data minimization is what we call it. To ensure that you're not putting in something which will identify what you're talking about, because one of the things that you are protecting is the product information or the client information if you're working in a services industry, because those are IP, right? And you need to be very careful about this. So what can you do to anonymize that information when it comes to testing AI outputs and protecting secrets? Like what is a secret, what is sensitive over there, and how would you ensure that that is not something that you're giving the tools access to directly, right? Usually if they're secrets, please use like a vault or something so that even your code doesn't have access to it ideally. The other thing is reducing the attack surface, right? Minimize the attack surface, like your AI API endpoints or your services. These are endpoints that, these are surfaces where attacks can happen. So when you're generating, let's say, when you're using AI generated configs or infra as code that is generated through AI, please be very mindful in reviewing that at least, so that you're not unintentionally exposing some services that you don't want to be doing. The other thing I would also add to this is about, of course, implementing access control, as we have been speaking about that a lot. So I'll not harp on that a lot, but just follow the principle of least privilege, right? Give the tools only access as much as they need to have access to. If they don't need to have edit access to a set of files or repositories or something like that, don't give that. Plan with your tools first and see what they're planning to do with that with that strategy, and then after you've looked through what it is intending to do, tweak it or not, and then go ahead and take use of those tools. Managing your dependencies that it is bringing in, validating your tests for completeness, quality, security coverage. I mean, of course you can become better at it by understanding how your prompts can evolve and become better as they go forward. But they don't start, like, don't just assume, oh, I have a tool, I can just give it a prompt and everything will just be hunky dory. It is not something that people reach as a stage from like day one or even day 10 for that matter. It is a learning process. You will come to a point where you will know how to get better at getting reduced risks in the AI outputs. But until then, validate, put in that human in loop that I was talking about, and just have very high level, very lightweight threat modeling of the components that you have. Like what can go wrong? The models that you're using, are you aware of the sources that they're coming from? Are you aware of the or are you comfortable with the information or the sensitive data that might be going back to, let's say, your servers, MCP servers, your plugins that are generated or created? Do you understand if there is an official backing for all of this? So all of these things definitely establish a better governance, and give you better understanding of the AI behaviors that might be coming in with this. And another thing I want to call out another thing that I want to call out from the governance standpoint is that we usually undermine the capability building. that people need to have before they actually start using some of these tools. We just jump to these tools without actually understanding how things should be used. And we would try to just jump to say that it eases my life, so let's just go ahead and do whatever it takes for me to not even sit in front of the laptop, right? So I think that capability building takes time. It takes some iterations to get there. So I would recommend that capability building in your team is also something which you should be focusing on when you're looking at governance.
Right. So getting things done versus getting things done the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched upon one more thing which I didn't talk about, but I think it's a really important part that you asked in that question is about what if things go wrong, right? Security incidents, if they occur, what can I do about it? Which is where that's important because we tend to just say that, oh, I'll take care of everything, but then incidents just happen. I mean, it's a part of our lives, and that is why understanding the accountabilities of the different supply chain parties that we have in all of this is important. There is some responsibility that lies on you, like configuring rightly with the permissions, making sure that you're anonymizing information on your end, data minimizations, and all the things that I talked about. There would be certain things that you can rely on. For example, if you have a certain license where the LLMs have said that we will not be using our information for training our models, then if you are in that tier, then you can actually take that for I don't want to say you can take that for granted, but the fact is, if something goes wrong, you can at least hold them liable for this. So understanding that responsibility and how that segregates, sure, you can be proactive, but being prepared with an incident plan is also important. Like what would you do if things actually did happen, if there were accidental problems that happened? It is important to plan for that too.
Perfect. Like perfectly answered. I was just about to ask you the same thing around it we didn't touch upon, but glad you covered it yourself. Uh, till here, right? We're almost near the end, right? We've just talked about a bit negatives, right? Being careful and not the right way, could go wrong, and all those things,
Yeah.
right? I think I would still want to ask, right? See, if AI is still the future, right? In a lot of sense, right? So, what mindset shift do you see testers and leaders would need to embrace, right? As Gen AI and AI in general becomes deeply integrated into our learning and working ecosystems in next 1 or 2 years.
See, I know that I'm talking of security, so it sounds like it's I'm being too protective about things. But I'm saying this because I am fascinated with the possibilities that AI is bringing in, and I really think we are still at the tip of the iceberg. But I'm also very hopeful because there is just so much money, resources, backing, innovation, leaders in the market, that I know that we have not even seen the real possibilities and the real capabilities that some of this can bring in. And which is why, we have, I'm sure all of you over here because you're all proponents of quality in software delivery, you would agree with me that security tends to come last, right? But in this case, we are not able to be that slow because the industry is really moving very fast. So there will be many things which will keep coming in. I think for leaders to think about, I think the questions are, what are you doing which is innovative enough to improve the redundancy, right? I mean, we all mostly come from QA background, so we understand that regression tests nobody likes, right? Because we don't want to be running the same thing again and again. We want to be doing new stuff, forward looking. What is next? So when it comes to what we have been doing for all these years, AI can actually automate that for you. It can actually ensure that your regression of maybe, going ahead and analyzing scenarios and writing tests for it, all of that can be reduced. Now it is about more forward looking to say that how can I propose workflows where the moment there are features that are thought about, we already talk about the impacts on quality. And it gives you statistics enough to say that is it a good idea? Like, what is the effort versus impacts, right? You can actually go to that level, or you can talk at a level where we are talking about saying that for example, taking autonomous decisions can also come to the point of saying that, okay, this is a story or a feature that needs to be checked for quality on. There is a workflow which reads that, figures out what are the test cases, figures out that it needs what kinds of testing. It needs functional testing, it needs accessibility testing, that goes ahead and triggers the right kinds of agents and pulls from the right kinds of tools that it needs to, and executes those tests, tells you what it means to have these things. These are innovations in our workflow. These are innovations in the future of quality that we could be looking at. So I think there is still a lot of possibilities, and I'm probably still limited myself. I mean, I'm sure there is much more. We don't have to be specific SMEs anymore. I mean, the AI has the knowledge. You just need to know how to use that SME knowledge of AI to do things better. So if you're not very experienced with performance testing, you're not very experienced with, let's say, security testing or coming up with threat models, I mean, you can. I mean, if you're using it well, you're in the right direction. So, I think there is a lot of possibilities, and we are still at a place where we are struggling to figure what the next step is. So, definitely a lot of innovations that I'm looking forward to.
Perfect, right. Great to hear, like, we jumped from, hey, be careful, and to the fact that, hey, there's a lot of possibility around there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Harini, I would like to take quick attention of yours towards some questions by our attendees right now, right? We are at a very last leg, so just let's keep it very quick and crisp. So comes from Shashank, right? So Shashank asks, I've been working with MCP servers from last 3 months, which we integrate with Claude. What do you think? How suitable do you think it is for a company ecosystem?
Good question, and it's probably a time that I can quickly plug that we also are speaking about specifically about MCP servers and security and integrating with them in our TribeConf next week. So I'll keep it very brief. I think for a company ecosystem, MCP servers definitely a good idea. Any AI innovations is always a good idea. The only thing is that you have to have a few things that you are being careful about as how you're integrating with them, because there are issues that MCP servers do also bring in. For example, there are in the market, there are many MCP servers which are not really genuine. There are MCP servers who are spoofing to be someone else, like or they initially are genuine, and then they suddenly start becoming malicious once they become popular. So I would say that as long as you are ensuring so I don't want to give a lot of the talk also away so that people can come attend. But as you should be definitely pulling in from official sources. Be careful about which MCP servers you are connecting with. Don't just leave it to leave it to Claude to select that, because it might be even directing you to something which is popular but not genuine. Um, there are for example, Docker. I think Docker Toolkit has a list of some of the genuine MCP servers that you can be connecting with. But yes, it's a good idea in short. But be careful of where you are and what you are sharing with it.
Super. Thank you, Harini. The next question comes from Kirti, right? And she asked, what are the critical points to consider while designing our own MCP server? And she asked about how do I, focusing on the QA industry, right? So she's like, you bring in the context of the QA industry as well.
Yeah, I think again, I'll be very quick on this. I think whether QA industry or not, the only thing about QA industry in this that would matter is what kind of, like, what is the capability of the MCP server over there? Like, what are the tools that it is integrating with? And maybe that is QA specific. But the fact that you are building your own MCP server will be true whether it is for the QA industry or otherwise, or whatever, for whatever reasons you're building it. For one, where are you hosting it? How are you ensuring that the hosting is secure? How do you ensure the connections that an integrator will make, like the client will make with the server, that is secure? How will you if you're connecting with an MCP server, you would also be sharing, I'm guessing, API keys, for example, to connect with that. How are you sharing that? Even the sharing mechanism needs to be secure. So it would be the tools that it connects with. If it is connecting with an LLM or an agent or things, what does it connect with, and how do you ensure that that cannot be spoofed? So I would say do a quick threat model for your MCP server, because these are some areas that you would have to consider if you're building your own MCP server. And again, what is the access that you give for the hosting that you have for your MCP server is also important to consider.
Perfectly answered. Folks, there were 2, 3, 4 amazing questions, but we're out of time. I'll try to take these questions to Harini at the back end and put them in the community later on. But for now, we're going to skip a bunch of questions from. Okay. Last closing content question or thought from your end, Harini. And now this is not. This is a subjective question to Harini only. And what are Harini's guiding principle, right? When it comes to working with AI tools responsibly, safely, and what is that one thing that you always ask yourself before you kind of integrate any AI tool in your work environment?
So I started off as a QA. So it's in my bloodstream. So I have this mindset of saying that, can I really trust what I'm looking at? So I think my general, everybody has a default. My default is I don't trust very easily. I actually make sure that I am checking where I'm going. And based on that, I would know how much I can trust, because I'm always thinking, if things go wrong, then how much am I willing to lose? Like what really would affect me? So I tend to think from that perspective. So I'm usually, like, all the things that I said, I actually implement that. I would reduce the information that I put out on some of these tools. I use it extensively. I use some of these tools on my work very extensively. But I'm very careful about what is it. Like, if we have an enterprise license for something, I know that it integrates with my documents and everything already. Then I know that I can trust it more than, let's say, coming to a like an open chat GPT or something like that, that is just commonly used. So I just am very conscious about thinking about the end result and then deciding what I want to do today.
Lovely. I think very few folks do that. The second order thinking of the second order first, and not just following the first principles, but lovely. Uh, Let me know if you guys can see my screen.
I can.
Yes. Yes. Uh, we are almost at the end, folks, right? Stay here, right? A big thank you for doing this, Harini, right? I know it's been a long day for you, for a lot of work and calls and everything, right? But genuinely appreciate you doing this for the community and sharing your perspective, being honest about the questions in your answers. Uh, and I think that's it from my end, folks. With that, hold on, we just here, right? Again, a huge shout out to our sponsor, BrowserStack. We always see this as like this is too salesy, right? But folks, partners like these help us to actually share this with a larger community at extreme scales, right? Uh, with that, let's take a quick look at BrowserStack and what they are actually delivering with AI-driven automated tests without actually coding.
Welcome to BrowserStack Low-Code Automation. Create and maintain AI-driven automated tests without coding and with reduced time and effort. Say goodbye to the complexities of coding. Our intuitive test recorder with no learning curve enables you to build tests by simply interacting with your app in a browser. Simplify test maintenance with AI-driven self-healing tests that adapt to app updates. Convert natural language prompts into test steps using AI. Forget about manual updates when your applications change. You'll test faster and maintain resilient test suites automatically. Our intelligent wait timeouts reduce test flakiness. Ensure your web application functions consistently with cross-browser testing on real desktop and mobile browsers with ease. Use our reliable and scalable test execution infrastructure to execute tests in the BrowserStack cloud without any setup. To get started, click on the Get Started tab on the Low-Code Automation product page, download the Low-Code Automation app, and start testing right away. Let's dive into test recording on Calendly.com, a scheduling tool. You can choose the required platform and resolution as per your testing needs. As you begin the recording, you'll see every step captured in real time. You can even record hover actions without additional input, ensuring easier recording. You can capture every step in plain English, making it easy to understand without the need for external test case documentation. You can even edit step descriptions for clarity. You can easily perform text validations for simple text content. So the test during execution checks whether the text is matching or not. Our visual validation feature enables you to confirm complex scenarios with ease. Visual validation will reproduce the same effect as a manual tester looking at the element. And during test execution, it will compare the two screenshots using BrowserStack's Percy visual validation engine in the backend. After creating your test, save it with a suitable name. You can run the test locally to confirm that the test is executing as expected. The test execution process is visually represented, allowing you to monitor each step and its status in real time, with a check mark indicating the pass or fail of the step. Also, screenshots of every step are captured, along with the video recording of the complete test execution. You can create test suites for organizing your tests. Assign tests to specific suites, select the browsers to run the test on, and schedule them to run on a particular day of the week and time. You can also run your test through different CI/CD tools, behind a private network, using local testing and against different environments from different geolocations. Run this build and get the results in your email on pass failure, along with detailed results. Check the results for each browser. To know what exactly happened during the test, the video recording of the complete test helps you to review all the test steps. Access console logs and network logs. You can directly edit the test from the test result. You can integrate API calls into tests to perform setup, tear down, generate test data, and database cleanup after execution. For advanced scenarios beyond recorder capabilities, Use JavaScript to perform complex actions, validations, and data extractions. Create maintainable tests by using variables to reuse values and pass values between steps. You can create modules to reuse your existing test steps across multiple tests by converting them into modules. Use AI to generate new data for any field, eliminating the need for data cleanup between executions. You can also use AI to simplify test case creation by using natural language prompts to define and execute test steps with no complex coding. Give a high-level functional statement like "get the stock price of Apple," and our AI feature will automatically break it down into multiple steps within the recorder and perform the actions. So that was just a sneak peek of our low-code automation. Sign up and create your first automated tests in 2 minutes. Happy testing.
Perfect, folks. Uh, the slide, we have an amazing, lively, active community on Discord. So if you're not a part of it, do join it, scanning through it. I've also pasted the feedback for this session, right? We take our feedback very seriously. It's not just for the sake of feedback. It's a genuine feedback that we act upon every time you share productive, critical feedback. So do take your time in joining the community and sharing the feedback for this session. And we'll try to get the pending Q&As through Harinee, and we'll share with you within the community. With this, I take your leave, folks. Have a great day. Enjoy your remaining week. Good night. Bye-bye.